Netbooks. You probably think you already know this story. Small, cheap laptops that showed up everywhere around 2008 and then vanished. You don't. Not the real version. The real version is about the fastest growing technology category in consumer electronics history, called the future of computing by every major analyst on the planet, completely dead within 5 years. Not discontinued, not replaced, dead. The entire segment wiped from existence so completely that most people under 25 have never heard of it. The reason it died is not what anyone expected. It was not competition. It was not bad timing. It was a promise so large and so impossible to keep that the moment people actually started using these machines, the entire category collapsed under the weight of its own marketing. But here is the part nobody talks about. The promise was not wrong. The hardware was. And in 2025, the hardware is finally right, which means something the industry buried a decade ago deserves a second look. To understand why netbooks happened, you have to understand what buying a laptop felt like in 2007. Not what laptops could technically do. What owning one actually felt like for an ordinary person. Heavy, expensive, completely disproportionate to the task. A decent laptop cost over $1,000, weighed enough to make your shoulder ache after an hour, and required you to stay close to a wall socket. For the majority of people who just needed to browse the web and check email, this was too much machine and too much money. The industry understood this gap existed and had no interest in filling it. Margins on cheap laptops were unattractive. Margins on expensive ones were not. So manufacturers kept building machines for the top end of demand and ignored everyone below it. That ignored majority is exactly where Asus looked when nobody else was looking. In 2007, Asus launched the EEE PC, 7-inch screen, plastic chassis, tiny keyboard, no optical drive, ran Linux to cut costs. $300. It sold out almost immediately, not because it was impressive, because it was enough. It browsed the web, it opened email, it fit in a bag you already owned, and at $300, it was a decision you could make without a week of deliberation. That combination had never existed in the laptop market before. The response told the industry everything it needed to know about the size of the audience it had been ignoring. Every major manufacturer responded immediately. Dell launched the Inspiron Mini. HP had the Mini series. Acer released the Aspire 1. Lenovo pushed the IdeaPad S. Sony released the Vaio P, so narrow the marketing claimed it fit in a jacket pocket, which said more about the marketing team than about jacket pockets. The category went from one product to dozens inside a single year. By 2009, netbooks were everywhere, and analysts called them the only bright spot in a market being destroyed by the global financial crisis. The growth was real. The numbers were remarkable. And underneath all of it, a structural problem was building that nobody wanted to name, because naming it meant admitting the product they were all racing to manufacture was fundamentally broken. The fatal flaw had a name: the Intel Atom processor. Low power, low heat, low cost. Ideal on paper, miserable in practice. More than 2 browser tabs simultaneously was a challenge. Video stuttered. Anything requiring real processing turned the machine into an exercise in waiting. Windows made it worse. Microsoft created Windows Starter Edition specifically for netbooks, a stripped-down, locked version of Windows 7 that removed features users took for granted. You could not change your wallpaper without paying for an upgrade. Here is what the industry knew and never admitted. This was not fixable with better engineering. Windows was not designed for low-powered hardware. Low-powered hardware could not do Windows justice. The mismatch was structural, baked in before a single unit shipped. People bought these machines expecting a small, capable laptop. They received a device that technically ran Windows the way a tired person technically jogs, but not in a way that inspires confidence in anyone watching. Return rates climbed. Manufacturers responded by cutting costs further, dropping quality at every level to protect margins that were already disappearing. Nobody won that race. And approaching from outside the category, 3 forces were about to finish the job entirely. In January 2010, Steve Jobs introduced the iPad and described netbooks directly: slow, poor displays, clunky software not built for what people actually wanted. He was not wrong. The iPad did what most netbook buyers needed and did it in a way that felt designed rather than compromised. Sharp display, fluid interface, no crippled operating system advertising its own limitations. Almost simultaneously, Apple dismantled another netbook assumption with the redesigned MacBook Air. Genuinely thin, genuinely light, and genuinely fast. It proved what netbook manufacturers had relied on being impossible. A small, light laptop could also be a capable one. The engineering problem was solvable. It just required actually solving it. Then came Chromebooks in 2011, a browser-based operating system on modest hardware that worked because the software was honestly matched to what the hardware could do. Loaded quickly, ran reliably, did not pretend to be something it was not. For students and casual users, it delivered what the netbook had only ever promised. The iPad took casual users. The MacBook Air took users who wanted portability without compromise. Chromebooks took users who needed affordable and functional. By 2012, netbook sales had collapsed. By 2014, the category was over. Here is what every obituary misses. The netbook dissolved into everything that followed it. The lessons it forced the industry to learn: that portability matters more than raw power for most users, that battery life is a primary decision, not a secondary one, that software must be matched honestly to hardware, shaped the entire laptop market for 15 years afterward. Ultrabooks were the industry answering what the netbook had asked badly. Chromebooks were the netbook done honestly. The MacBook Air lineage was the netbook dream with proper engineering behind it. The netbook lost the battle and shaped everything that won. Which brings us to right now. ARM processors, the architecture behind Apple's M-series chips, and the Snapdragon X Elite chips in Windows machines are doing something the Intel Atom never could, delivering genuine performance in a tiny, efficient, fanless package. A MacBook Air with an M-series chip weighs almost nothing, runs silent, lasts all day, and handles real work without hesitation. That is the netbook vision, the actual vision underneath all the broken promises, finally working. The original netbook failed because the hardware could not support the experience the idea required. That gap no longer exists. So the question sitting at the center of the laptop market right now is whether we are at the beginning of a genuine second attempt. Small, light, affordable, actually capable, the original promise finally executable. Or have tablets already won that territory permanently, and the users who wanted something small and connected simply have no reason to return to a keyboard? The netbook arrived with the right idea and the wrong hardware. The hardware is no longer wrong. What happens next is the most interesting open question in consumer technology right now. Speaking of things that promised to change computing and ended up being more complicated than expected, the story of what happened to removable batteries in laptops follows a remarkably similar pattern. Manufacturers made a decision that frustrated millions of users, claimed it was progress, and the full picture turned out to be far more about business than technology. Click on the next video to find out what really happened.